Pope was announced to have passed away nearly a week ago, leaving behind countless unanswered questions. While the world is still mourning and speculating, a series of strange letters quietly arrived at our channel, carrying unbelievable testimonies from the spiritual realm concerning the death of Pope Francis. Truly, all of it reshaped my thinking, and surely yours too, that death is only the beginning. Among these letters is one from a woman who had devoted her entire life to serving within the church. But a tragic accident completely altered her fate. In the final moments of her life, her soul was pulled into a terrifying reality, where she witnessed with her own eyes the horrific fate awaiting the soul of Pope Francis after death. How could a soul once praised as the supreme representative of God on earth now be found in hell? What horrifying truth has been hidden from the eyes of the world? Listen to this story to the end, because it will not only change the way you view the Pope, but it may also serve as a divine warning meant for you. To walk this journey of faith together with you, we invite you to leave your name and the city you live in. We will lift you up in prayer before the Lord, strengthening one another in love and truth. If this vision touches your heart, please consider supporting our mission through super thanks. Whatever you sow in faith, God promises to return to you 100-fold. And if you are not yet part of the community of over 20,000 hearts spreading God's light this month, we invite you to subscribe today. Please listen carefully to these testimonies and share your thoughts on these shocking revelations concerning the Pope. Hello, my name is Rose. I was born into the Roman Catholic Church. That was all I ever knew growing up. We went to church, prayed the rosary, and revered the Pope as if he were the closest man to God on earth. I never had any reason to question anything. I simply followed what everyone else around me did. But something happened on April 12th, something I have never forgotten. It wasn't a dream, nor was it a story someone told me. It was real, so real that even now I can still feel it deep within me. For many days, though, I was too afraid to speak about it. I kept it buried inside because I thought no one would believe me. I thought people would laugh or say I was lying, and I didn't want to be mocked, so I remained silent. But just a few hours ago, I heard the news that the Pope had died, and suddenly what I had seen days earlier came flooding back to me, vivid and powerful, as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. Something inside me said, now is the time. Not tomorrow, not next week, but now. I don't know exactly why, but I believe God wants me to speak out, to share what I witnessed so that others might hear and perhaps help me understand. I'm not pretending to know everything, and I'm not claiming that I fully understand the meaning behind all of this. That night, the chill of winter crept through the monastery walls. As a nun who had spent many years devoted to consecrated life, I was accustomed to staying up late to pray or recite the rosary. But that evening I made a mistake I had always warned myself against, taking a bath too late at night. The icy water seeped into my skin, making me shiver as I stepped out of the small bathroom. An unusual cold draft wrapped around me, causing my body to tremble. Though feeling slightly dizzy, I thought a little rest would set me right. As was my nightly habit, I brushed my teeth, knelt beside my bed to recite the rosary, the familiar prayers echoing in my mind. Then I climbed into bed, lying down, staring at the ceiling of my simple monastery room, where faint light from a street lamp outside filtered through the window, casting shifting shadows. My body was weary, my mind blank, and I quietly waited for sleep to come. But then, without any warning, something miraculous and astonishing occurred. I felt no pain, no sensation of my soul leaving my body, yet suddenly I found myself viewing the scene from a completely different perspective. It was as if the eyes of my soul had opened, revealing a dimension I had never known before. I was still in the humble room of the monastery, but I was no longer bound by my physical form. Looking down, I saw my body lying motionless on the bed, eyes closed, chest rising and falling with slow, steady breaths. Yet the consciousness, the soul, stood beside the bed, peculiarly alert, perceiving every detail around me with crystal clarity. I was not floating, not soaring as many mystical tales would suggest. I was simply present, separated from my physical body, observing it as an outsider. Strangely, I felt no fear. As a nun accustomed to contemplating the fragility of life, I had assumed that such an experience would cause panic. But no, I was completely serene. A profound sense of peace enveloped me, unlike the fleeting calmness found in everyday life, but rather an absolute security, as if I were being sheltered by a divine, magnificent, and almighty power. All my senses became sharper than ever. The very air of the room seemed alive, vibrating with a sacred energy. I could hear the silence, a notion that seems illogical, yet it was the only way to describe it. That silence was not empty. It was full of meaning, like a sacred whisper resonating within my soul. I felt as though I had just awakened from a long dream, the dream of an earthly life filled with illusions, to step into a moment of pure reality, where everything was clear, vivid, and bathed in divine light. In just a single moment, everything changed. Just a moment ago, I was still floating above the monastery room, gazing down at my own body lying on the bed. But without any sensation of movement or journey, I suddenly found myself in a completely different place. No more cold stone walls, no more old ceilings, no more humble bed. I was now in the middle of the sky, a vast, silent space, flooded with gentle light. This sky was unlike any sky I had ever seen. It was far more radiant, but not blinding like the sun. This light was soft, alive, as if it whispered the mysteries of the universe. I was not afraid. Though I felt small before this immensity, I was surrounded by a profound sense of safety, as if an invisible hand was cradling me, guiding me through this wondrous realm. As I looked around, two beings appeared before me, floating effortlessly in the air. Without any introduction, my heart immediately recognized them. They were angels. Their presence radiated a sacred strength, gentle yet immensely powerful. They bore a human-like form, but not of earthly humanity. A brilliant light enveloped them, like shimmering cloaks, making them seem as if they were carved from divine light itself. Their faces were serene and solemn, but not frightening. Their eyes looked at me, deep and full of meaning, as if they had known me from countless lifetimes before, as if they had been waiting for me here. No words were spoken, yet their gaze conveyed a message. A message too lofty, too sacred for me to comprehend at that moment. Before I could react, before I could utter a single word, they vanished. No flash, no sound. They simply dissolved into the air like a wisp of smoke blending into the breeze. Yet their presence left a sacred imprint within me, as if I had touched something far beyond the mortal world, even if only for a fleeting instant. Then, immediately after, I found myself standing in a place my earthly eyes could not truly perceive, but my soul understood with crystal clarity. No signpost was needed, no explanation required. I knew this was heaven. This certainty was not a passing thought, but a profound, peaceful knowing that filled every corner of my being. This place carried its truth within itself, a truth that needed no proof. Though I had never set foot here before, it felt more real than any place I had ever known on earth, as if this was the true homeland of my soul. As I stood in the midst of the divine realm, I was swept away by the overwhelming beauty of this place, a space that did not belong to the earthly world, where gentle light soaked into every corner as if heaven itself was breathing. But then, a movement in the distance caught my gaze. An endless line of people appeared, stretching all the way to the mystical horizon. They were men, women, children, the elderly, all walking slowly, silently, in a solemn flow. They came from every corner of the world, dark skin under desert suns, pale faces from frozen lands, clothing ranging from coarse robes to fine silks, hair intricately braided or flowing freely. Some faces stirred vague memories, as if I had seen them somewhere in my life, but most were strangers from lands I had never heard of. Yet all of them were united by a common purpose, a sacred journey. They moved forward, immersed in a silence full of meaning, as if their entire lives had prepared them for this moment. Their faces were solemn but serene, their eyes reflecting reverence and acceptance. Without a word spoken, I could feel the weight of their journey, the joys, the sorrows, the choices that had shaped their destinies. The line of souls grew shorter as they approached a magnificent gate, not made of gold or precious stones, but seemingly woven from pure, divine light. Each person stepped forward and paused before a being I could not describe with earthly words. He was not human, neither bearing the form of man nor woman, but was an embodiment of purity and power. The light radiating from him was not blinding, but gentle and profound, making everything around him fade into insignificance, as if all of heaven bowed before him. Each soul stood before him, motionless, with no sound, no unnecessary movement. The air grew heavy, not from tension, but from the presence of something eternal and unchanging. I could feel judgment taking place, not through words or gestures, but through the gaze of that being, a gaze that pierced through every hidden corner of the soul. The way they stood, the way they lifted or lowered their heads, said everything. It was the moment of truth, impossible to hide, impossible to escape. I could not look away, captivated by the sacred reverence of the scene. Each soul, standing before the being, seemed to take a final breath, not of life, but of preparation, as if they knew this was the decisive moment. The stillness that enveloped everything was not mere peace, but a power beyond understanding, causing my heart to tremble. That being, radiant like the primordial light of creation, bore no human form. He was light, yet living light, filling the space without causing harm. His authority made me shudder, not out of fear, but out of awe at a presence that could not be resisted. He stood by the gate, and each soul, though possibly harboring fear within, bowed before him. They knew in that moment that every secret, every action, every thought was laid bare. Nothing could be hidden. I stood there, witnessing, my heart pounding before the absolute truth of heaven, a place where justice and mercy blended together in divine judgment. In the quiet line moving toward the gate of judgment, I suddenly felt the sacred space around me stand still. A familiar figure stepped into view, making my heart tighten. It was Pope Francis, the Pope the entire world knew through his sermons of peace, his gestures of humility, and the simple white robes that often appeared on television. Even though the ethereal light of heaven blurred his features, I recognized him instantly. The bishop's mitre, the flowing white robe, and the slow but heavy gait. None of it could be mistaken. A strange feeling arose within me, as if heaven itself was whispering that this moment would be different, that it would shake the very foundation of all I had ever believed. He moved forward to stand before the radiant being at the gate, a manifestation of divine light, exuding a power that made the very air tremble. Unlike other souls who merely stood in reverence, Pope Francis knelt. His body, once strong in preaching to millions, now trembled like a leaf in a storm. His head bowed low, his hands clasped together as if offering up a silent plea. No words were spoken, but I could feel the desperation in his posture. A wordless cry for mercy, as if he stood face to face with the full weight of his sins. The being did not respond verbally, but the light surrounding it grew more intense, as if piercing through Francis's soul and stripping away every hidden secret. Suddenly, an invisible force pulled me forward, I was no longer a distant observer, but was drawn closer to Pope Francis, to the very center of the judgment. I tried to lift my head to see his face, to catch a glimpse of the eyes that had once inspired millions, but a gentle yet firm force kept my gaze lowered. I sensed I was not permitted to see fully, as if the truth about to be revealed was too heavy for someone like me to bear. Then, out of the misty light, a document materialized before me. A secret record of Pope Francis, glowing faintly within the sacred space. It resembled an ancient book, its shimmering pages recording every moment, every decision of his life. I stared, heart pounding. Lines of text appeared, neatly and clearly, like a carefully arranged summary of his life. But then, to my horror, I saw thick black strokes crossing out many sections, as if someone had tried to erase his past. What remained sent a chill through my bones. One line stood out, unmistakable and seared into my mind. He swore allegiance to the Antichrist. Pope Francis, the man who led the Catholic Church, the man revered as a beacon of faith, had allied himself with a dark force, betraying God. I wanted to deny it, to turn away, but the truth stood there, cold and unerasable. Grief rose like a tidal wave, engulfing me. I had believed in him, in his teachings on mercy, in his image as a pope close to the poor. But the record did not stop there. The lines that had been crossed out but still faintly visible twisted my heart. He was entrusted to lead humanity toward Jesus, but he chose darkness. He spread false doctrines, encouraging the world to accept what God condemns. Each word cut into my faith like a blade. How many followers had blindly walked behind him, believing they were on the path to salvation? How many souls had been led astray by those twisted teachings? This truth was not just a judgment upon him, but a solemn warning to all humanity, a deception that had crept deep into the heart of the church. I stood there, my heart heavy, watching Pope Francis kneel before the divine being. His body trembled, no longer the majestic leader once seen on the Vatican balcony, but a soul confronted with sins that could no longer be hidden. His eyes were filled with tears, glistening in the heavenly light, reflecting profound remorse. There was no deceit, no pride left, only raw pain, as if he were bearing the consequences of choices that had led millions astray. I wanted to feel compassion for him, but the truth in the records was so horrifying that my heart was torn between sorrow and terror. Then, the being raised a hand, not with anger, but with a slow, authoritative gesture. A faint light flared up, and the space around me began to shift. I felt a powerful force pulling me, not forward, but into a different dimension. The scene of heaven faded, replaced by a chilling, suffocating darkness. I found myself standing before an endless abyss, where the sounds of wailing and roaring flames echoed. Hell unfolded before my eyes, not as the paintings in churches depict demons and tongues of fire, but as a place saturated with despair, where souls were imprisoned in eternal agony. At the center of the abyss, I saw Pope Francis. He no longer wore a white robe, but was bound by invisible chains, as if his own sins were restraining him. His face was twisted in pain, his eyes bloodshot, devoid of the light of hope. Around him, shadowy figures appeared, souls who had once followed him, led astray by false doctrines. They did not attack him, but their gazes were filled with accusation, unspoken yet piercing. Every look struck him like a whip against his soul, making him collapse and scream in regret. The fires of hell did not burn his flesh, but scorched his soul. I saw him tortured by memories, moments when he chose darkness over light, twisted sermons he had preached, decisions that led millions away from God. Each memory was like a blade, cutting deep, making him shrink in unbearable agony. But the deepest pain was the realization that he had betrayed not only God, but also those who had trusted him. His cries echoed through the darkness. not seeking forgiveness, but expressing the despair of a soul knowing there was no chance left to make things right. I wanted to turn away, unwilling to witness more, but an invisible force held me in place. I realized this was not just punishment for Pope Francis, but a warning for all. His fall was not merely the story of one man, but a lesson on the consequences of abandoning the light. Hell was not only a place of fire and pain, but a place where souls were forced to face the truth about themselves, with no escape. As the heavenly light faded from my mind, the image of Pope Francis in the abyss remained, haunting me, a grim reminder that even the highest can fall, and the price of betrayal is too heavy to bear. The darkness of hell's abyss still haunted my mind, the image of Pope Francis imprisoned in agony lingering like a wound that would not cease bleeding. Yet suddenly the space around me shifted, as if an invisible hand pulled me away from the nightmare. The gentle light of heaven enveloped me once more, soothing my trembling heart. I found myself standing in a vast expanse where the sky shimmered as though woven from millions of stars, and the air was filled with a sacred melody, wordless yet echoing deep within my soul. I was no longer at the brink of the abyss, but back in the divine realm, where everything was pure and full of meaning. Before me appeared an angel, one of the two beings I had encountered in my first vision. His light was more radiant than ever, like a flame that did not consume, wrapping around a figure bearing the shape of man yet surpassing all earthly bounds. His eyes were deep, carrying both the sternness of justice and the infinite mercy of God. He did not speak immediately, but his very presence compelled me to fall to my knees, not from fear, but from a natural reverence, as if my soul instinctively recognized that I stood before a messenger of God. He gazed at me, and in that gaze I sensed a message waiting to be revealed, a message too vast, too sacred for me to fully comprehend. "Do not be afraid, O one chosen to bear witness," the angel's voice resonated, not through sound, but as a stream of thought flowing directly into my mind. "What you have seen is no accident, but part of an ancient prophecy, inscribed since the dawn of time." His words made me tremble. I, an ordinary nun who had lived my life quietly within the convent, how could I bear such a heavy responsibility? But before I could protest, the angel raised his hand, and a scroll of light appeared before me. It was not made of paper or leather, but seemed woven from the very light of heaven, shimmering with living letters that breathed and pulsed. The scroll unfurled, and I saw images unfold, not as paintings, but as living events happening before my eyes. I saw the Catholic Church, once the lamp that lit the path for humanity, now shrouded in darkness. False doctrines, born from the fall of Pope Francis, spread like a plague, shaking the faith of millions. I saw war, division, and lost souls wandering in the darkness for lack of a guiding light. But the most horrifying vision was of the future, a world where the deception of the Antichrist reigns, and the Church, once the pillar of truth, becomes a tool of darkness. Each image struck like a dagger, leaving me breathless with pain and helplessness. Francis was chosen to lead, but he chose the path of betrayal, the angel continued, his voice heavy with sorrow but not anger. His fall is a sign of the Church's final trial, when light and darkness will confront each other. Yet the fate of humanity is not sealed. You, O witness, must bring this warning to the world. I shook my head, my heart weighed down. "I am just a nun. No one will believe me," I cried out within my mind, fear gripping my voice. "They will mock me. They will call me insane." The angel looked at me, his gaze tender but unwavering. "The truth does not require the crowd's approval. You do not carry this burden alone. God is with you, and time will prove your words true." The scroll of light closed, but the images remained seared into my mind. I felt a heavy responsibility press upon my shoulders, as if the future of the Church itself rested in my frail hands. The fear of being ridiculed, of being isolated, screamed within me. But the angel's voice remained like a small flame, kindling a flicker of courage inside. I did not know if I would have the strength to face the world, but I knew this revelation could not be buried. The fall of Pope Francis was not merely the tragedy of one man, but a wake-up call for all, a call for humanity to awaken before the darkness devours the light. In the gentle light of heaven, the angel's hand slowly rose, not with the sternness of a command, but with a tenderness full of meaning, pointing toward the left. I stood in awe, not immediately understanding the intention of that gesture, but a profound feeling stirred deep within me, as if that direction held the key to destiny, not only for Pope Francis, but for everything I had just witnessed. I longed to follow, to understand more clearly, but my feet felt as if they were anchored to the ground. An invisible force held me still, my heart pounding, my eyes locked onto the scene. The light around me began to dim, as if heaven itself was folding back, preparing to close a sacred chapter. The angel's movements were slow, deliberate, and I knew that something monumental was unfolding. Then, like an unexpected gust of wind, everything changed. It was not a smooth transition like when I had first entered the sacred realm, but an abrupt interruption, as though I were being violently pulled away from the vision. The images, Pope Francis kneeling in agony, the angel with the fathomless eyes, the radiant being by the judgment gate, faded swiftly, dissipating like smoke swept away by the wind. I tried to hold on, tried to memorize every detail, but that divine world slipped through my grasp, leaving me in the stillness of a cold monastery room. I opened my eyes to find myself lying on a bed, breathing heavily, my heart pounding as if I had just run an endless race. Yet the vision did not leave me. It lived vividly within my mind, every image, every sensation, like an unquenchable flame. I sat up, my hands trembling as I clutched the rosary. What I had just witnessed, the fall of Pope Francis, the prophecy delivered by the angel, the book of light warning of the future, was too great, too terrifying to be kept to myself. Who am I to recount this story? A nun who lived quietly, never leaving the convent except for brief trips. How could I stand before the world and speak of a vision that even I do not fully understand? Fear rose within me, whispering that people would mock me, call me insane, or worse, turn their backs on me. But the voice of the angel still echoed in my mind. Truth does not need the crowd's acceptance. God is with you. I walked to the window, gazing out at the still night sky, where the stars shimmered like reminders of heaven's light. This vision was not a dream, not a trick of the mind. It was a mission. A burden I, despite my weakness and doubts, had been chosen to carry. I did not have answers to every question. I do not know why Pope Francis fell or whether his fate could yet be redeemed, but I know that what I saw was real and that truth must be shared. Perhaps, as the angel said, I am not alone. Perhaps somewhere out there others are also seeking answers, ready to piece together the fragments of this vision to understand its deeper meaning. I knelt down, clutching the rosary tightly in my hands, and prayed, not for strength, but for courage. Courage to step out from the quietness of the convent, to face the world, to tell a story that could change everything. The vision had shaken me to my core, but it also kindled a small flame inside me, the flame of hope that even though darkness spreads, the light of truth can still prevail. I do not know what lies ahead, but I know that I cannot remain silent. The mission from heaven has begun, and I, though just a small nun, will carry that flame forward. I am not here to proclaim divine authority or special knowledge. I do not know whether this vision is a warning, a message, or merely a fleeting glimpse into another reality. What I do know is that it feels real, and the emotions it left in me are undeniable. But I will not make bold declarations or final conclusions. That is for others to discern. This is where I ask for help, because I truly cannot do this alone. I share this experience with the world not because I have all the answers, but because I believe someone else might. I ask anyone reading or hearing this to share their thoughts, their interpretations. What do you see when you read this? What do you feel when you hear about my vision? Perhaps you have an insight, a perspective I have not considered, a missing piece I am still seeking. Rose's letter is just one among many testimonies from the spiritual realm about the death of Pope Francis that have been sent to us. If all of this were mere imagination, then why have different people, from distant lands separated by thousands of miles, received the same chilling vision about the death of Pope Francis? These are not random stories. They are alarm bells from heaven, sent to those who still have ears to hear. Another witness. A man who once served in the military in Afghanistan was also given a vision concerning the Pope, but what he shared is even more horrifying and darker than what Rose witnessed. Stay with us, because what you are about to hear will shake every old belief you once held about so-called holiness and unveil a truth the world is not prepared to face. Recently, a series of unsettling events have unfolded, from the pandemic and wars to the passing of Pope Francis. All of these serve as unmistakable signs of God's gentle warning. The ancient prophecy is being fulfilled. This is what God told this man when he died in a terrible accident. After his death, God showed him a secret hidden behind the Vatican, and that the death of Pope Francis conceals a horrifying truth that even the Church cannot allow to be exposed. So what is the truth behind Pope Francis's death? What grave sin did he commit to be exposed by God in such a way? Stay with us until the end, because time is running out, and the warning from the Lord is being sent across the earth. Before we begin, kindly leave your name and city so we can lift you up in prayer, calling your name before God and standing together in faith. If this story has touched your heart, we humbly invite you to support this mission by clicking Super Thanks. God will bless you abundantly in return. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so today and join us in spreading God's love and light. Now listen closely to his testimony. My name is Luca. I'm 68 years old. I once served in Afghanistan. Now I work as a social worker, helping the homeless in Boston. I've seen enough horrors in this world: death, despair, and even corruption. Yes, even in the most sacred places, churches, and among Christians. It was a normal evening, like so many others in Boston. Outside it was about -2 degrees, the kind of cold that cuts through the skin, typical for April here, a kind of chill that only Boston can offer. I was either watching the evening news or reading the paper, I don't remember exactly, because my mind felt far away, as if drifting somewhere else entirely. And then the news came. Pope Francis had died. Even though I had heard the rumors and friends had mentioned his declining health recently, when I read those words, I still couldn't believe it. No matter how much my faith had wavered over the years, I still felt a deep shock. He brought something truly different. He felt like a father figure, someone who understood the pain of the poor and the abandoned, the very people I care for every day at the center, the homeless in Boston's biting winds, the ones forgotten and left behind by the world. I felt empty. A part of my hope seemed to vanish. I can't quite describe the feeling, but it was like a barren wasteland, a deep hollow carved into my chest. I went to bed, pulled the blanket up to my waist and tried to sleep, but I couldn't close my eyes. That feeling gnawed at me, wouldn't let me rest. Then, out of habit, I prayed. But that night, it wasn't the old, familiar prayers I had recited 1,000 times before. I spoke to God plainly. Lord, why did you take him right now when the world is in such chaos? What are you doing, Lord? Please help me understand. I had no more words to offer. The feeling of being lost in this world made me feel like I was standing at a crossroads where everything was fog. But I knew, somehow, the answer would come, even if I couldn't see it yet. That night I prayed with all my heart. I bowed my head in silence, my fingers tracing each bead of the rosary like a habit etched into my very flesh and blood. The words of the prayer, Our Father, echoed in my mind, slow, familiar, like a lullaby for the soul. But when I reached the phrase, Lead us not into temptation, something inside me faltered. It was as if an invisible void opened in the center of my chest. A sense of unease surged, not from the outside, but from within the very words I had just spoken. I had never feared a prayer before, but in that moment I trembled. My heart felt gripped, as though something unseen had clenched it tightly. A crushing pain rippled through my chest, as if someone was calling me from another world. I struggled to breathe, but the air seemed to vanish. My fingers slipped from the beads. The rosary fell from my hand and hit the floor with a soft yet chilling sound, like a warning whispered in glass. My vision dimmed. My body remained, but I was no longer there. When I opened my eyes, everything had changed. I didn't know how I got there. I was standing atop a hill, the air around me unfamiliar, unlike any place I had ever seen. I looked down, and a feeling both familiar and foreign stirred within me. A magnificent, radiant city unfolded among the hills, and I recognized it instantly. It was Rome, specifically the Vatican City. I stood there, stunned by the sight before me, as if witnessing a space that wasn't entirely real. The 7 hills gleamed beneath a mystical light. Suddenly, the sky darkened. Thick clouds swirled above, spinning like a storm of wrath rapidly approaching. That feeling, it was truly terrifying. An unshakable dread surged in my spirit, like a dark omen, as though something catastrophic was about to erupt. In that dreadful silence, I heard a voice, deep, authoritative, yet full of love. Luca, the voice called, powerful yet gentle, like a father calling his child. Luca, he called again, look and understand. I don't know how I moved, but that strange sensation was irresistible, and then I found myself standing before a massive gate. The light coming from the other side was radiant, dazzling, but it didn't hurt my eyes like the sunlight in Afghanistan that I had once endured. There was only me and that light, and a tingling sense that I was standing at a point of no return. I stepped through the gate, and the moment I entered, everything around me seemed to dissolve. All the worries, fears, burdens I had carried throughout my life, every feeling of uncertainty vanished. In that light, I saw a figure. Not a clearly defined face, not like the images I had seen in churches, but I knew without doubt, with absolute certainty, it was Jesus Christ. He looked at me, or more accurately, he understood me. And you know what? There was no judgment, none at all. Only complete acceptance, a depth of understanding that I could never fully express. He knew everything about me, every thought, every action, from the good to the bad, the wrongs I had done. I felt completely exposed before him, and yet, strangely, I wasn't ashamed. There was only love, a profound love that made me want to cry. He communicated everything directly into my mind like a stream of thought, a feeling, an immediate understanding. He showed me things I had never considered, and this might make you immediately think of stories or prophecies in the Bible, but it was even more than that. He showed me a massive ancient history book, so old it looked as though it had existed for centuries. I saw worn, weathered pages, each one turned by his invisible hand. On each page I saw history. The history of the church, of the popes, of those who had led us through the ages. He paused at one page, my friends, the very last page. And that's when he told me about a monk named Malachi. This monk lived hundreds of years ago and was said to have had a vision in which he wrote down a list of future popes, a prophecy of 112 pontiffs. Then he pointed to the 112th pope on that list. The name made me shudder, because on that final page I saw the name of Pope Francis, and right next to his name was the final prophecy. In the radiant light of the vision, I felt my heart pounding as if I were standing before a great secret. The ancient book remained open before me, its worn pages turning under the invisible hand of Jesus. He stopped at the final page, and I saw a line of words appear, glowing brightly as if written in fire. It was the final prophecy, the prophecy concerning Pope Francis. It stood apart from the lines before it, longer, heavier, and it sent a cold shiver through my heart. I saw the words clearly. In the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, Peter the Roman will feed the flock through many tribulations. When these things are finished, the city of 7 hills shall be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge his people. I trembled, not fully grasping the meaning, but a mixture of fear and curiosity welled up inside me. The city of 7 hills was Rome, was the Vatican, but what did destroyed mean, and who was the judge? I looked at Jesus, hoping for an explanation. He smiled gently, like a teacher guiding a student. "Luca," he said, his voice deep and warm, yet full of authority, "look carefully. I will show you the truth." And as if I were a detective following clues, he unveiled each piece of the prophecy, every detail concerning Pope Francis, helping me understand this was no coincidence. First, he pointed to the number. Francis is the 112th Pope, since Pope Celestine II, exactly as the prophecy had recorded. I was astonished. The number matched perfectly, like a key fitting precisely into its lock. It was simple, yet its precision made me shudder. Next, he explained the name Peter the Roman. I immediately thought Francis was born in Argentina, not Rome, but Jesus showed me an image. His parents, Italians from the Piedmont region, carried Roman blood in their veins. Though he was born far away, he was Roman in origin. I nodded, realizing this piece, too, fit perfectly. Another puzzle piece revealing the bigger picture. Then he spoke about the name Peter. Francis's real name is Holy Mario Bergoglio, not Peter. But Jesus pointed to another image. St. Francis of Assisi, from whom he took his papal name, was born as Giovanni di Pietro, which means Giovanni, son of Peter. I saw a flash of light in my mind. Francis had chosen that name as if to embody the spirit of Peter, the first apostle. Everything aligned as if God had written this thread centuries in advance. Finally, he showed me the most painful part of the prophecy, to lead the flock through many tribulations. Suddenly, vivid images appeared before me, as if I were witnessing the life of Pope Francis unfold. I saw him facing horrific scandals within the church, cases of child abuse, faith that had been stolen. I saw him kneel, eyes full of tears, apologizing for the pain the church had caused. That pain was deep, like a mother mourning the loss of her child, helpless, only able to plead for forgiveness. I saw him meet with the victims, listening to each heartbreaking story. He did not hide, even though each word they spoke was like a blade. I remembered my own days as a social worker in Boston, facing the sorrow of the homeless, and I understood. He could not change the past, but he poured every part of himself into healing, into restoring hope. Then I saw division within the church, like a family breaking apart. Some called him a heretic, saying he was too soft on traditional doctrines. Others accused him of not reforming quickly enough. I saw him standing in the middle, attacked from all sides, yet patiently leading. I could feel his loneliness. It mirrored the loneliness I once felt when society turned its back on me. What hurt me the most were the criticisms about his origin. Many within the church said he was unworthy to be pope because he wasn't European. I saw his eyes full of sorrow yet free of resentment. I thought of the homeless in Boston, scorned by society simply because they were outsiders. Francis was the same, but he continued to live simply, humbly, as a true father to the forgotten. Jesus looked at me, his gaze piercing deep into my soul. "Luca," he said, "these are the tribulations foretold in the prophecy. Francis is Peter the Roman, and his reign marks the beginning of the final days." I stood there in silence, feeling the full weight of his words. The prophecy was not just an ancient tale, it was becoming reality. The radiant light of the vision suddenly turned sharp and cold, as if I was stepping into a realm beyond time itself. I felt my heart pounding, my breath caught in my chest. Jesus stood before me, his eyes still full of love, yet now holding a sternness that made me tremble. "Luca," he said, his voice deep as if echoing from eternity. "Look, I will show you a painful truth." Before my eyes, a scene unfolded, unlike anything I had ever imagined. There was no hellfire, no thick smoke, no demons screaming as in medieval paintings. Instead, there was a blinding space, a pure white light so intense it was almost unbearable. But this light didn't burn the skin, it pierced the soul, burning away every lie, every mask, until the true essence of everything was exposed. In that light, I saw Pope Francis. He stood there, no papal robes, no crown, no authority, just a man, a soul laid bare before divine truth. I saw him tremble, not from physical pain, but from something deeper, the agony of realization. Before him, the words he had once spoken appeared, etched like lines of fire in the air. I heard his voice echoing, words filled with compassion, that all religions lead to God, that love alone was enough. But in this light, those words twisted, revealing themselves as paths that misled. I saw him collapse, his face soaked in tears. Every word he had ever spoken, even those born from kindness, now revealed their consequences. They had led many away from the cross, toward a false hope, a peace that was never real. I could feel his anguish, as if his soul were being torn apart from within. He didn't argue, didn't defend himself. He simply remained silent, head bowed low, like a child realizing his mistake beneath the eyes of a loving father. In that moment, he was no longer a pope, just a broken soul, standing before the perfect truth of God. I wanted to turn away, not wanting to witness anymore, but Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder, his voice gentle yet firm. "Luca, look, good deeds cannot replace truth. Compassion must be rooted in my word, or it will lead people astray." I saw a vision appear, bridges built from bricks that shimmered with kindness, but beneath them lay deception, crumbling beneath the light of God. Then he looked straight into my eyes, and I felt my entire being freeze. "My Father is love," he said, and I saw beams of light emanate from him, flooding me with a love that no words could ever describe. But my Father is also truth. His words were like a blade cutting through every haze in my mind. Love and truth never contradict each other. "The only way to the Father is through me," he continued, his voice echoing like thunder. "Not through a building, not through ritual, not through mere goodness, but through the acceptance of my sacrifice." I couldn't breathe, realizing that I too had been mistaken. I had once thought that being good was enough, that I could soften the word of God to avoid conflict, but he would not allow me to hide. "When you say there are other ways, you are denying me," he said, and I felt my heart shatter. I bowed my head, tears falling, because I knew I too was guilty. I had clung to comforting lies to keep peace. He led me back to the ancient prophetic book, its pages turning before my eyes. I saw each pope before Francis, and every one of them matched the prophecy in remarkable detail. Pope Celestine II, the castle by the Tiber, was born near that river. Pope John Paul I, the half-moon, reigned for only 33 days, as fleeting as a crescent moon. Pope John Paul II, the solar eclipse, born and died during eclipses, his reign brilliant but filled with trials. Pope Benedict XVI, the glory of the olive, carried the spirit of peace through the Benedictine order. Each detail was precise, as if history had already been written. Jesus pointed to the final page, where the name Francis was written. "This prophecy is a warning," he said. "If it was true for those before him, then it is true for him as well, and for what is to come." I stood there, heart heavy, feeling the weight of truth. The punishment that Francis endured was not fire or chains, but the light of truth, the light that exposed every error, forcing him to confront the consequences of what he had done, even if with good intention. And I knew that same light was shining on me too, demanding that I live honestly by the word of God. I clearly remember the final line of the prophecy. It echoed like a warning bell. After these things are fulfilled, the city of 7 hills will be destroyed, and the dreadful judge will judge his people. At the time, I thought destroyed meant bombs falling, Rome engulfed in flames like in apocalyptic films. But no, Jesus showed me its true meaning. It wasn't about buildings collapsing or blood flooding the streets. It was the fall of something sacred, once sacred. A system, a foundation. Perhaps it was the church itself, or maybe our entire civilization, one that was built on faith, on God's word, on sacrifice. And now, that foundation is hollow. Truth has been replaced by what feels emotionally right. Grace has been distorted into unconditional acceptance. The name of God is being used to justify everything except His own holiness. The Lord told me this is the destruction of the soul, a collapse from within, a city of 7 hills that no longer stands upon the solid rock, but is plummeting into the abyss. Then He made me face the most terrifying part. The dreadful judge will judge His people. Listen carefully. Not the world, not those who never heard His name, but His people. That means us, the ones who call ourselves Christians, the ones who go to church every Sunday, the ones who shout Amen. But do our hearts truly live according to His word? He said it plainly. Judgment will begin in the house of God. And in that moment I trembled, not because of fear of hell, but because I finally felt the true weight of faith. To be called a child of God is not a privilege, it is a grave responsibility. I don't know where you are on your faith journey, but I must ask, have you ever thought about this? If that makes you reflect, type Amen. Then the Lord said it to me clearly. No riddles, no symbolism. Luca, this is the final hour. We have reached the end of the list. The Malachian list I once doubted, once dismissed in my mind, had now become a map leading to the most pivotal moment in human history. And what comes next, what the whole world must awaken to and prepare for, is the arrival of the Judge, Jesus Christ. He is coming back. In the radiant light of the vision, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. The space around me seemed to contract, and a heavy weight pressed against my chest. Jesus looked at me, his eyes still full of love, but now laced with a solemnity that made me tremble. Luca, he said, his voice deep as if echoing from eternity, before I return, one will be sent to mislead. He is the false prophet. I didn't have time to ask anything, for immediately an image appeared before my eyes, clear as though I were standing in the middle of reality. I saw a man, not like dictators or politicians on the evening news. He wore religious robes, his face radiating dignity, compassion, and an almost saintly glow. He looked like a pastor, a priest, or someone I might have once trusted on my way to church. He had a strange magnetism, as if the whole world was ready to kneel and listen to him. But when he opened his mouth, I recoiled. His voice wasn't human. It was deep, low, like the growl of a dragon hidden beneath a gentle disguise. The words he spoke sounded reasonable, emotional, soaked in compassion, but I sensed a cold falsehood beneath them. Every sentence was a trap, gilded to mask its manipulation. I saw him raise his hands, and miracles began to happen. Fire fell from the sky, the sick were healed, and wonders left the crowds awestruck. For a moment even I felt drawn in, believing he was a man of God. But Jesus placed his hand on my shoulder, and suddenly I saw the truth. These miracles did not glorify Christ. They existed only to divert eyes from the cross, to draw people toward him, to worship him, to follow him. I shuddered as I realized how sophisticated the deception truly was. Then the image shifted. I saw him create a symbol, not a statue of stone or bronze, but a system, an idea that caused the whole world to bow. He convinced people to put their trust in a man, an organization, or a saint, anything but Jesus Christ. I felt breathless, as if my soul was being crushed under the weight of this horrific truth. "This is the final age," Jesus said, his voice both tender and resolute. "He's coming to spread deception." The vision shifted to another scene, and I saw a movement spreading across the world. It was called ecumenism, a call to unite all religions, to bring everyone together in peace and love. I saw people holding hands, singing sweet songs, speaking of a shared God. At first, I thought this was what God wanted, the unity he once prayed for, that they may be one. But Jesus shook his head, and I saw more clearly. That movement was not leading people into his truth. It was watering down the word of God, turning truth into something relative, making faith vague, as if love alone were enough. I saw it as a road leading straight to the Antichrist, a trap disguised in poetic language. I wanted to scream, to warn everyone, but I was only a soul suspended in the vision. Jesus looked directly into my eyes. His gaze pierced through to the depths of my being. "Luca," he said, "the false prophet is preparing the path of deception. He will twist my word and offer counterfeit peace. But I will be with those who remain faithful, those who hold fast to my word." His words etched into my heart, and I burst into tears, not from fear, but because I realized everything unfolding in the world is no longer by chance. He showed me the signs. I saw a pandemic that froze the entire world, cities so silent they looked like graveyards. I saw war erupt in Ukraine, the Middle East, and other places, as if the whole earth was screaming in agony. Disasters struck, earthquakes, trembling, wildfires devouring, freak blizzards sweeping through lands unprepared. But what chilled me most was not the disasters, it was the moral collapse. People had lost all sense of shame, reverence, and belief in absolute truth. I used to think these were just difficult times, temporary seasons. But now I saw clearly. These were birth pains, signs that the return of the Lord was drawing near. The clock of creation was ticking in reverse, and I could feel the urgency in every beat of my heart. The final vision shook me to my core. I saw people, maybe my friends from the homeless shelter on Dorchester Street, or the wealthy sitting in Starbucks, eyes glued to their screens. They were blind, not in their eyes but in their souls. They walked through the fog, consumed by money, status, and empty political arguments. They didn't recognize the signs of God, disease, war, moral decay, calling them to wake up. I saw false prophets rise among them, speaking soft words, "We're all the same." The crowds believed them instantly, without question, because their words sounded tolerant, inclusive, peaceful. But no one checked them against the word of God. No one paused to ask, did Jesus really teach this? Then I saw the judge. Jesus, no longer the gentle lamb, but the returning king, radiant in power and glory. Before him stood familiar faces, not evil, not malicious, just unprepared. They had the chance, but they chose to live their own way, building their lives on human values instead of the only path he had laid out. There were no screams, no rage, only deep, aching regret in their eyes. I heard the whispers in their minds. I had the chance, and I let it pass. I collapsed, heartbroken, but Jesus lifted me up, his voice gentle yet unwavering. "Luca, I showed you this not to scare you, but to warn you. People must take my word seriously because there is only one path to life. This is not about religion, it is about truth, the truth of eternal survival." His words burned away every doubt inside me, leaving behind an unshakable conviction. Time is running out, and I must carry this warning back. Then suddenly I was back, without warning. It felt like being yanked down to earth after floating in the heavens, as if someone had thrown me onto a concrete floor from a great height. My body ached, my head spun. I opened my eyes and saw the ceiling of my small apartment in Boston. The sound of car horns still echoed from Washington Street. Dim light from a street lamp filtered through the window, and the cold, that distinct chill of April, sank into my bones. But strangely, the feeling of light, of love, and most of all the urgency of the message I had just received remained fully intact. It hadn't faded. In fact, it was more real than the ceiling I was staring at. So real, I didn't dare breathe too deeply. At first I tried to push it away. It was just a dream, Luca. You've been tired lately, probably the back pain and stress from the shelter work. I tried to convince myself of that. Then I blamed it on age, maybe my mind's starting to slip. But you know what? That weight wouldn't leave. And then the command. Not a thunderous voice, but a sensation so clear it felt etched into my bones. Go back and share. The echo repeated. Every second, every minute. I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to tell someone, anyone, even if just one person would listen. But how? Who would believe me? A 68-year-old man, once a soldier, now living among the homeless. I thought of my ex-wife. If I was still with her, how would she look at me now? And my kids, my old friends from the army, from church, would they think I had PTSD or that my mind had slipped with age? It all seemed too insane to speak aloud, even to myself. People might just think I'm a senile old man. No one would believe me. That's why I'm asking you to tell Bible stories. Please help me share this story with as many people as possible. So these are the prophecies that God revealed to this man, that Pope Francis is the final pope. But where is the pope now after his passing? Heaven or hell? If you have ever had any doubts about this, listen closely to the next story. This is the testimony of a woman, and in her near-death experience you will find the answer.